Leviticus chapter 9. I'm surprised at the insights, the jots and tittles, the Torah pearls that we come across, even here in the book of Leviticus. Little tidbits of truth that still affect our faith journey today. Welcome to another episode of Papa John's Scripture Notes. This project is ongoing. I do it for my children, for my family, current and future posterity, extended family I know and love today from different backgrounds and faiths, and friends I've met along the way. I hope you're enjoying your faith journey. I know I am. I gained so much strength, and I'm grateful for the Come Follow Me curriculum that pushes me to keep up and dedicate the time necessary. I'll try to keep these episodes short, but some of them you can't help it. There's so much in there. Leviticus chapter 9 is the Shemini, the 26th weekly Parashah Torah portion for their annual reading, and we're going to get right into this. Jared Halverson, our LDS scholar, says, offerings here are made and offerings here are accepted. Verse 1 talks about, and it came to pass on the 8th day. Here's their new beginning. Halverson's so casual about that. Shouldn't we be stopping and thinking, what, the 8th day? What's the 8th day? I thought there were 7 days in the week. But he just says, here's their new beginning, and continues the verse that Moses called Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel. And he commanded them to offer various sacrifices for the priests as well as for the people. And in verse 4, he promised them, for today the Lord will appear unto you. What a promise. But you can't help it. Papa John can't help it. The Lord is in all capitals. Lord is all caps. So what it was originally, it said, for today Yehovah will appear unto you. Our next scholar is Nehemiah Gordon, our Hebrew scholar. He says, so I think this is such an interesting opening because imagine 2,000 years ago, and you're sitting in the synagogue and you've been working really hard in your fields for 6 days. Then Shabbat morning, you show up and the person opens the scroll and stands in front of everyone and starts to read. And it came to pass on the 8th day that Moses called Aaron and his sons. And you're like, the 8th day? What on earth is he talking about? I thought there was only 7 days in a week. What's going on here? And because the story is a continuation of what happened in the previous section, which was in Leviticus 8, verse 33, where it says that he ordained or sanctified them, essentially, Aaron and his sons, for 7 days, and they were to remain in the tent of meeting during these 7 days. And then on the 8th day, here's what's happened with these sacrifices. What this reminds me of, Nehemiah says, is that there are really two different systems that we're dealing with here, neither of which are originally part of the Bible. The one system is the system of the parashah, of the weekly Torah portions that we traditionally read in the synagogue. Well, they didn't exist in the time of Moses. That's something that somebody came up with by tradition, probably over 1,000 years later. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a nice tradition and it's useful, but it's not a part of the original scripture. And sometimes you can forget what's going on because it's been a whole week since you've read. In the Hebrew text, Leviticus 8 and 9, well, that's one continuous story. Even calling them 8 and 9, those chapters were invented only in the 13th century, less than 1,000 years ago. I'm not saying throw away the chapters. How would we reference scripture? In the old days, they used to quote the whole verse. Well, most of us aren't smart enough to do that or have a good enough memory to do that. So we'll say Leviticus 9:1 instead of as it says, Vayahe Bayom. Hashemni, and then quote the verse. So it's Papa John struggles. I hope my posterity, someone learns Hebrew and can carry this work forward that Papa John is trying to incorporate. As we're, the attempt is, what am I doing? I'm trying to get back to the original languages, the history and context, get past the English language and the surface of Scripture. I want to get beyond the surface of Scripture. I want to see what it originally said. So thank you for laughing with me as we go through this. But someday, someone in my posterity, or a friend, or extended family is going to know Hebrew and be able to improve on these insights that I'm just scratching the surface of. But it's at least beneath the surface of the English that we inherit. Now, Nehemiah ends this footnote by saying, it's a good convenience, but let's remember that's not an original part of the text, and let's not be misled by that. Let's always look at it in its context. And and there's a flowing context here. The fact that somebody put a chapter beginning at chapter 9, verse 1 doesn't mean let's forget what it said prior. And our Methodist minister says, but the other thing that it brings up is that without context, there's no eighth day. Meaning when we count days 1, 2, 3, 4 over in Israel, I believe you guys don't even do that in the Hebrew language, Nehemiah. The day 4, the day 5, the day 6, that's how you count. Nehemiah says, we don't say Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. We say Yom Yashon, Yom Shani, Yom Shlishi, Yom Ravi'i, Yom Chamishi, Yom Shi, which literally means first day, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day. And then the seventh day we actually call Yom HaShabbat, the Sabbath day. Did you know that? They don't even call it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, those types of things. And there's a reason for that, but that's not for today's episode. Now, in response, our Methodist minister, Keith Johnson, says, right. Actually, so in that counting of time, there is no eighth day, meaning the next day is the first day. So after 7 days, it's the first day. So when you're reading this out of context and you read the eighth day, and I'm like skimming and thinking, wait a minute, where was the seventh day? So I'm actually glad that you brought that up, because if you don't get a chance to see sort of the big picture, we can kind of get lost a little bit. All right, Papa John, here's a somewhat lengthy footnote from Papa John. I love this focus on the seventh and eighth day. What a great way to get over what's called the Leviticus headache, or what many Christians experience as the Leviticus coma. But this reference to the eighth day should catch our attention, right? And think about it. This eighth day symbolism is not lost on the millennium. That's why the Hebrew Sabbath being on the seventh day is so rich with symbolism. For us, it's a day of rest as we do our holy rehearsals of what it will be like to enter into the Lord's rest. I think what Papa John originally was trying to communicate here is the seventh day and the Sabbath being on the seventh day is now a holy rehearsal of the future events we call the millennium. We're rehearsing what it's going to be like to be in the presence of God. Back to my footnote. We keep it holy because it's sacred. It is a sacred reminder to us. We are rehearsing a future holy event. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. As we observe and keep the Sabbath as this holy rehearsal, it's what it was intended to be, because it's pointing our attention towards the seventh 1,000 years, which we will spend in the presence of Christ. It will be amazing because Satan is bound during that time, and then for a short season, Lucifer will be released for only a short season. And as a final test for us before the new beginnings of the 8,000th year, when we who stay true will finally be brought back into the presence of God the Father, of Yehovah himself. This will be our new beginnings with God the Father. It will be we will be introduced to the Father by the Son, Yeshua Messiah, aka Jesus the Christ himself. Such a glorious new beginnings it will be. I'm grateful to see this focus and symbolism clear back as the tabernacle is first being instituted. along with Aaron and his sons, of whom I am one, though by adoption. May I do my part in this ongoing restoration during the fullness of times, when all things will be revealed, leading up to the second coming of Jesus Christ. That is my prayer. And I look forward to the millennium, the 7,000th year with Christ. And even more so, I look forward to the 8,000th years, those years with God, the Father, a new beginning celebration with all the glory going to Yehovah as Christ does. It's all the glory is going back to the Father who made all of this possible. I hope you catch a little hint of the spirit of what I'm excited about. The eighth day and the symbolism of its new beginnings has not been lost with Papa John. It's a new discovery for me. I knew seventh day was perfection or wholeness or completion, as God created everything in 7 days and then rested on that day and called it good. But there's more coming, and I love the symbolism numerically. And it wasn't lost to our Hebrew scholar or our Methodist minister. That's pretty cool. As I'm scrolling, you'll see again the highlights and the restoration of God the Father's name that was redacted and whitewashed out of Scripture, at least for the English versions. After verse 6, our LDS scholar says, in verse 4 and verse 6, it repeats but clarifies. Moses says, "This is the thing which Yehovah commanded that ye should do, and the glory of Yehovah shall appear unto you." What are we leading up to? I'm going to just skip. We'd have a lot to cover, but this might be a shorter episode. Again, you'll see the highlighted, restored divine names for God the Father. After verse 22, our LDS scholar reads and says, Aaron lifted up his hand towards the people and blessed them and came down from offering of the sin offering and the burnt offering and peace offerings. And then Jared says, I'm so grateful that the Lord gave Aaron a chance to redeem himself. This is the opposite extreme from the golden calf moment, when he claimed that I didn't have anything to do with this. It's them, those people that they're bent on mischief. I just threw their earrings in the fire and it came out this calf. Oh, not quite. But Aaron Halverson continues, I will give you, speaking as if for God, I will give you a chance to prove yourself, a chance to serve yet again and to lift up your hands before the people, to truly bless them here. That action with the golden calf ended up cursing them. But to put this gold to its true purposes will be the ultimate blessing. We who have harmed others spiritually can become a person who ends up helping them and blessing them, Brother Halverson says. And Aaron fits that bill perfectly. He really does. Keith Johnson, our Methodist minister, adds this section is a really pretty clear picture of how serious it is, and even as regards to Nehemiah's book that's coming, that will be called The Hebrew Power of the Priestly Blessing Unleashed. Regarding the priestly benediction and the prayer, I mean, it isn't something that you just casually throw around. This is like literally setting the divine name upon people. So, I mean, it's really something that causes me to just kind of slow down a little bit as I'm reading this. And the next section is even a little bit harder to deal with. Now, Jono Vandor from Australia, our Messianic believer, he says, sure, we're going to get to that. But just before we do, Nehemiah, I just want to ask you, in my study notes of my New King James Study Bible, here in verse 22, it says, Aaron blessed them. The ultimate function of the priest was to bless the people. When God gave the priesthood blessing, he said that the priest would put his name on the children of Israel and he would bless them. Would you agree with that? Is that the ultimate function of the priest? And Nehemiah Gordon responds, well, I say that's one of the functions. It's not the only function. There's a verse that I think we've quoted in Deuteronomy, which kind of defines what their function is. I think we've quoted that. And when we talked about leprosy, which in the chronology hasn't happened yet, just like the Torah pearls are not revealed in the chronological order. So if you look at Deuteronomy 21:5, for example, it says, and the priest of Levi will approach. For in them Yehovah your God, Yehovah your Elohim, has chosen to serve him and to bless the name of Yehovah, and according to them shall be every manner of strife and every naga. Well, okay, help us, Nehemiah. He says, which can be translated as plague or leprosy. They have several functions here. The priest, to bless the people, to serve Yehovah, and to teach the people the commandments of Yehovah, to settle disputes, and to teach that the people that what the commandments of Yehovah are. So we have here several functions of the priest. It's not just to bless them, but that is a major function of the priests, to proclaim the name over the people. Absolutely. And as we scroll a little further, Jonah Van Dor continues. He says, and so when the people saw it, that's of course the fire came, the glory of Yehovah, and the fire from before Yehovah, and consumed all the burnt offerings and the fat on the altar. And when all the people saw it, they shouted and fell on their faces. Ouch. Now, Methodist minister Keith says, when you're reading this, depending on what it is that you're focusing on, you tend to have those things jump off the page. So for me, when I look at that line and it says that they shouted, well, first the fire came down, and then here comes the shout. So the question becomes, what did they shout? It doesn't say. It doesn't say what they shouted, but definitely the response of the fire caused them to shout something. And then they found themselves prostrated before him. So I think that's pretty cool. Then our Hebrew scholar adds, there's a lot in this verse. It's interesting. So you have Leviticus 9:24. I just realized what you guys are talking about, because I'm like, the shout? What shout? And that's what you have, is shout. Well, in Hebrew, the word is vayarono, or vayaronu, no, which means to sing for joy. And all the people saw, and they sang for joy, and they fell upon their faces. Now, what they sang for joy, I don't know, because it doesn't say, but they were joyously singing. And that's actually, there's a Hebrew name derived from that, a common name for girls, which is Rena, which means song, joyous song. So Vayarono, no, Vayaronu, and they sang for joy, because it's not the word Vayanronu, which means, and they shouted. It's a different word, for they sang for joy. Hey, I think, Papa John, with the help of our scholars, we're getting past the surface, aren't we here? We're getting back to the original language, history, and context, a little added clarity. Now, our Methodist minister responds, and now there we go. They sang for joy, and they fell on their faces. There's a pearl. There we have a Torah pearl. Thank you, Nehemiah. Now he responds, but remember, in verse 24 is one of the most exciting events in this section. And they reasoned, and the reason they sang and fell on their faces. Why? Because, and a fire came forth from Jehovah and consumed that what was upon the altar, the burnt offering and the fats. I mean, wow, you can't gloss over that. That's an amazing thing. And fire came forth. We see that happen with David. There's Elijah. There's Mount Carmel. It's actually happened twice with Elijah, once on Mount Carmel, as recorded in 1 Kings 18:38, and the other time when the men came to arrest him, and that's in 2 Kings chapter 1. It's happened 3 times there, actually, verses 10, 12, and 14. It also happened with Solomon in 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 1 through 3. When Solomon ended his prayer, fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of Jehovah filled the house. We have similar things possibly in Judges chapter 13, and there the angels appears to Manoach, who is the father of Samson. And this is before Samson's born. At this point, he's a fetus in his mother's womb. And Manoach says to the angel of Yehovah, can we persuade you to stay while we prepare a kid for you? They want to bring him a sacrifice. And the angel of Yehovah said to Manoach, though you detain me, I will not eat your food. But if you will offer a burnt offering, you must offer it to Yehovah. So Nehemiah says, that's so amazing. They want to bring a sacrifice to this man that appears to them and giving them a prophecy. And he's like, don't offer me anything. It's not for me. Offer it to Yehovah. And then it goes on and says, for Manoach did not know he was the angel of Yehovah. So Manoach just thinks this man is a prophet, that he's been sent by Yehovah. He still wants to offer a sacrifice. He doesn't even realize he's talking to an angel. And then in verse 17, then Manoach said to the angel of Yehovah, "What is your name? That when your words come to pass, we may honor you." And the angel of Yehovah says to him, "Why do you ask my name, seeing it is wonderful?" Actually, Nehemiah says, or actually, it could also mean hidden. So his name is not, perhaps not wonderful, it's hidden. That's actually the same word in the prayer in Psalms 119:18. See how this scholar bounces around? His hyperlinks are so active. His mental synapses are just firing off, and he's just connecting dots left and right all throughout Scripture. So back to Psalms 119:18, where he says, Ga'ana vena vita nifla'at mi Torah techa. Let's just cut to the chase. So, why is his name hidden? You don't need to know my name. Worship Yehovah. You know the name of the one that you need to worship and bring the sacrifice to, and it ain't me. Then in verses 19, Manoach took the young goat with the grain offering and offered it upon the rock to Yehovah, and he did it, a wondrous thing, while Manoach and his wife looked on. Now Nehemiah interrupts again. Now, what's that wondrous thing? What it is we don't know, but it's definitely something that impressed them. And then it goes on in verse 20 and kind of implies that it has something to do with a flame consuming the sacrifice. And it happened as a flame went up toward heaven from the altar, and the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame of the altar. And when Manoach and his wife saw this, they fell on their faces to the ground, again falling on their faces, just like here in Leviticus. And then it ends in this account with this angel and Samson's mother and father. When the angel of Yehovah appeared no more to Manoach and his wife, then Manoach knew that he was the angel of Yehovah. So the angel disappears. I think this is such an amazing story because this man appears to them. They don't realize he's an angel. He's speaking this prophecy, and they want to bring him the sacrifice to him. And the man who happens to be an angel says, "You don't need to know my name. You know the name of your creator. Bring the sacrifices to him, not to his agent, not to his representative, not to his angel or Malik." But then look at the next verse, verse 22. And then I'll end with this. Nehemiah says, and Manoach said to his wife, we shall surely die because we have seen God. We have seen Elohim. They still don't get it. Nehemiah is surprised by that. They've seen an angel, and seeing the angel, they think the angel is the same thing as Yehovah. They don't realize he's an angel. I mean, they may realize at some intellectual level that the angel represents Yehovah, but they're confused. The messenger. They're confusing the messenger with the sender. You know, he adds, the rabbinical sages actually point out that this is one of the great errors of the adulterers in ancient times. That if you look at the Canaanites, what they would do is they would confuse the messenger with the sender. They would look at the forces of nature and they would look at the storm and say, we know God sent that storm, and the storm therefore is God. And they'd worship the storm and they'd call him Baal, the Lord of the storm. They'd look at the sea and they'd knew that God created the sea, and they would worship the sea as God. They were worshiping essentially the messengers, the agents of God, the things that God created as God himself. That essentially is an ancient form of idolatry that existed in Israel before they got there. And some of us have picked it up. I'm speaking of my people, of the Jewish people, who sometimes will look at angels and they will pray to angels. Literally, Orthodox Jews that I grew up with will have prayers to angels. Not all of them, but many of them will pray to angels. They'll pray to the dead rabbis. Some of the very things that they were warned about here in this story and throughout Scripture, such as not praying to the messengers or of things that we're doing, but we're still doing to this day. You know, this is a short episode and we skipped a lot of the verses. Take time to read these verses. But now with these footnotes, I hope we have a better understanding of the context, the language, and the historical significance. This was a major event in ancient Israel. I'm grateful for this episode. Let's wrap it up for now. Dwell on these things, ponder on them, continue to read the scriptures on your own. Let's not forget to be examples of the believers, hopefully good examples. And we certainly do love and serve a great God, don't we? And I'll talk to you again soon.